Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we had talked about Chapter 18 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. Today, we are going to talk about Chapter 19 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. We will go through the chapter and try to understand how the criminal codes work and how the criminal procedure code is followed. So if you are new here, you can like and subscribe to my channel to get the video notifications. So let's get started. So in this video, we are going to talk about Chapter 19 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. This chapter talks about trial of warrant cases by magistrates. So in the previous chapter, we had read about trial of the Sessions Court. Now in this chapter, we will understand the trial of warrant cases by magistrates. We should understand here that the procedures that are mentioned in the previous chapter and the procedures that are mentioned in this chapter are somewhat similar to each other. Now as we go through this chapter, we will understand this more and more. So let's start with section 238 that talks about compliance with section 207. When any warrant case is instituted on a police report, the accused appears or is brought before a magistrate. So in the previous chapter, we understood this, that an accused is brought or he appears before the court of sessions. In this case, he appears before the magistrate, and the magistrate shall satisfy himself as to if the section 207 has been complied with or not. Now let's move on to section 239, which says when accused shall be discharged. So if upon considering the police report and the documents that are sent along with under section 173, and after making such examination, after giving the prosecution and the accused an opportunity of being heard, the magistrate thinks that the charge against which the accused is framed is groundless and he shall be discharged, then he may record the reasons for doing so and discharge such accused. Now section 240 talks about framing of charge. It says that upon consideration and after conducting the examination, if the magistrate is of the opinion there is ground for presuming that the accused has committed an offence that is triable under this chapter, then the magistrate who is competent to try will adequately punish him and shall frame in writing a charge against the accused. The charge shall be read over and explained to the accused, and he shall be asked whether he pleads guilty to that offence or not, same as that was done in before the court of sessions. Now section 241 talks about conviction on plea of guilty. So same as the court of sessions, if the accused pleads guilty before the magistrate, then also he will be convicted thereon by the magistrate. Section 242 talks about evidence for prosecution. So if the accused refuses to plead or does not plead or claims to be tried, or the magistrate does not convict the accused, then in all those cases, same as Sessions Court, the magistrate shall fix a date for the examination of witnesses, provided that the magistrate shall supply in advance to the accused the statement of witnesses that are recorded during investigation by the police. So the magistrate will provide the accused in advance about all the statements of witnesses that are recorded during the investigation by the police. Now the magistrate may, on the application of the prosecution, issue a summons to any of its witnesses directing him to attend and produce documents or other things. Just like the court of session does so, the magistrate will also issue summons on application of the prosecution, directing the witnesses to attend the court and, if necessary, to produce any document or other thing that is concerned with this case. And on the date so fixed, the magistrate shall proceed to take all such evidences as may be produced in support of the prosecution. Now, provided that the magistrate may permit the cross-examination of any witness to be deferred In Court of Sessions, this is also followed. We have read in the previous video. Here also the magistrate will permit cross-examination to be deferred of witness or witnesses that are examined and recall any witness for further cross-examination. Now let's move on to section 3 that talks about evidence for defense. So here also the accused shall be called upon to enter upon his defense and produce his evidence. Accused will also be allowed to produce his witness or other evidences upon whom or which he relies his case. And if the accused puts any written statement, then the magistrate shall also file it with the record. So all those procedures that are followed in the Court of Sessions are also followed here. Now, after the accused has entered into his defense, if it applies to the magistrate to issue any process for compelling the attendance of any witness for the purpose of examination or cross-examination or production of any document or other thing, then the magistrate shall issue such process. So he will also issue such process for the defense witnesses, just like he did so for the prosecution witness. And he may only refuse to allow such application on the ground if it is made for vexation or delay or defeating the ends of justice. So the conditions are also same as in a proceedings before the Court of Sessions. Now, provided that when the accused has cross-examined or had the opportunity of cross-examining any witness before entering on his defense, the attendance of such witness shall not be compelled under this section unless the magistrate is satisfied that it is necessary for the ends of justice. So the magistrate will be the person to judge whether a witness is necessary for the ends of justice to appear before the court and give his evidence thereof. Now subsection 3 says the magistrate may, before summoning any witness on an application under subsection 2, require that the reasonable expenses incurred by the witness in attending for the purposes of the trial be deposited in the court. So all the necessary expenses for bringing up such witness to depose before the court shall be bared as per the directions of the court. The court will thereby pass an order for the necessary expenses to be submitted before the court for the purposes of bringing such witness before the court. Now section 244 talks about evidence for prosecution. So when in any warrant case that is instituted otherwise than on a police report, then the accused appears or is brought before a magistrate, the magistrate shall proceed to hear the prosecution and take all such evidence as may be produced in support of the prosecution. So when an accused is brought before the magistrate or he appears himself before such magistrate in such way as mentioned in section 244, then the magistrate shall proceed to hear with the case and he will also take all such evidences that may be produced in support of the prosecution. Now the magistrate may, on the application of the prosecution, issue a summon to any of its witnesses directing him to attend or to produce any document or other thing. So the production of witnesses, any document or other thing will be ordered by the magistrate as per the application of the prosecution. Now section 245 talks about when accused shall be discharged. So it says that if upon taking all the evidence referred to in section 244, the magistrate considers that he has reasons that he will record in that particular case, that there are no case against the accused that has been made out. So the allegations were futile or baseless, or no case was made out against the accused, then in those cases the magistrate will discharge him. So the magistrate will discharge that accused in cases where allegations were not made out against the accused. Now nothing in this section shall be deemed to prevent a magistrate from discharging the accused at any previous stage of the case, if for reasons to be recorded by the magistrate he considers the charge to be groundless. So if the magistrate during the trial is ongoing somehow finds out that the charges that are alleged against the accused are groundless or baseless or futile, then he may at any previous stage of the case discharge the accused from such case and from such charges, and he will also record the reasons for doing so. Now section 246 talks about procedure where accused is not discharged. So if when such evidence has been taken or at previous stage of the case, the magistrate is of the opinion that there is ground for presuming that the accused has committed an offence that is triable under this chapter. So the magistrate found out that the accused has actually committed the offence, then which the magistrate is competent to try and which in his opinion could be adequately punished by him. So if the magistrate finds out that such offence has been committed and he can actually punish that accordingly and he is competent to try such case, then he will frame in writing a charge against the accused. So a charge will be formed against the accused. Now the charge shall be then read over and explained to the accused, and he shall be asked whether he is pleading guilty or he has made any defense to make. So the procedure is all same. This is the procedure. Whenever he is found guilty, he will be framed with a charge, and that charge will be read over and explained, whether it is a court of sessions or the court of magistrates. Now, if the accused pleads guilty, then the magistrate shall record the plea and shall convict him thereon. That is the end of the story there. But if the accused refuses to plead or does not plead or claims to be tried, or if the accused is not convicted under subsection 3, then he shall in all those cases required to state at the commencement of the next hearing of the case, or if the magistrate thinks fit, then whether he wishes to cross-examine any or not the witnesses of the prosecution whose evidence has been taken. So basically this subsection says that whenever a person is framed with a charge and he pleads not guilty of that charge, then on the next date of hearing the evidences will be called for. So the prosecution evidence will be called for and then the defense witness will be called for. This is the natural flow of a trial. This is how a trial is conducted. So that will happen. Now subsection 5 says, if he says that he does so wish, the witness named by him shall be recalled and the cross-examination and re-examination, they shall be discharged. So if the witnesses that are called or recalled, and after the cross-examination or re-examination of those witnesses, they shall be discharged. Now the evidence of any remaining witnesses for the prosecution shall be taken next, and after the cross-examination and re-examination they shall also be discharged. So the evidences of all the remaining witnesses for the prosecution shall be taken only after the witnesses that are mentioned in subsection 5. Now section 247 talks about evidence for defense. So the accused shall then call upon the evidences on his favor, and he shall enter upon his defense and produce his evidences, and the provisions of section 243 shall apply to the case. So once the prosecution witness is completed, then the accused will enter his defense and the defense witness will be called for. Now the section 248 talks about acquittal or conviction. So if in any case under this chapter in which a charge has been framed, so after the framing of a charge, the magistrate finds the accused not guilty, then he shall record an order for acquittal. So he will release that offender. Or where in any case after this chapter the magistrate finds the accused guilty but does not proceed in accordance with the provisions of section 325 or section 360, then he shall, after hearing the accused on the question of sentence, pass sentence upon him according to law. We had already read about this in the court of sessions. The court of sessions also work in the same procedure. Now where in any case under this chapter a previous conviction is charged under the provisions of subsection 7 of section 211 and the accused does not admit that he has been previously convicted, then the magistrate may, after he has convicted the said accused, take evidence in respect of the alleged previous conviction and shall record a finding thereon. So this procedure was also performed by the court of sessions. We had already read about this exhaustively in the previous video. We know that when an offender is charged with an offense and then he pleads not guilty, then if the magistrate finds that this person has been previously convicted in any other charge, then he may take evidence in respect of the alleged previous conviction. Now, provided that no such charge shall be read out by the magistrate, nor shall the accused be asked to plead thereto, nor shall the previous conviction be referred to by the prosecution or in any evidence adduced by it, unless and until the accused has been convicted under the subsection 2. So, we had also read about this in the previous video, that unless and until the accused is convicted, until then no prosecution evidence can be adduced, or the accused won't be asked to plead whether guilty or not. Neither shall be the charge read out to the accused by the magistrate if he is not convicted under subsection 2. Now, section 249 talks about absence of complainant. So, when on any day of the proceedings which is fixed for the hearing of the case, on that day the complainant is absent. So, whoever has filed the complaint is absent on the date of hearing, and the offence may be lawfully compounded or is not a cognizable offence, then in those cases the magistrate may in his discretion, notwithstanding anything herein before contained, so without disturbing the previous provisions, at any time before the charge has been framed, discharge the accused. So, if the charge is not framed, then the magistrate may discharge the accused if the magistrate finds out that the offence that is alleged against such accused by the complainant is lawfully compoundable or is not a cognizable offence. Then even if the complainant is not himself present before the court, then also the magistrate can discharge the accused on such grounds, as is mentioned in section 249. Now, section 250 talks about compensation for accusation without reasonable cause. We have already read about this in the previous video when we were talking about the Court of Sessions can compensate the accused person if the charges that were brought against him were baseless and futile or did not make up good accusation against him. Then in all those cases, the magistrate may also do the same. He may also order the discharge or acquittal of the person and also make the complainant pay a compensation to the accused person for such baseless or futile allegations, if it is found by the magistrate that there are no grounds as to frame such charge against that accused or to pass a sentence in regard to the complaint that is made against the accused. And the magistrate may also show cause the complainant as to why he should not be ordered to pay a compensation to the accused person. Now, subsection 2 says that if the court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for making such accusation, but if the grounds are not reasonable enough, then the magistrate may also pass a compensation order, just like the Court of Sessions did, as we read in the previous video. The magistrate may also pass an compensation order not exceeding the amount of fine that he is empowered to impose. Now, we had already read that the Court of Sessions can pass a compensation order of 1000 rupees. The magistrate is, however, empowered to pass an order for compensation, but the amount of fine shall not exceed the amount that he is empowered to impose. Now, the magistrate under subsection 3 may also order imprisonment of simple nature for a period not exceeding 30 days, that is 1 month, if the fine or compensation that is passed by such magistrate against the complainant is not paid by the complainant within a reasonable time, or if the payment becomes default. Now, when any person is imprisoned under subsection 3, the provisions of section 68 and 69 of the Indian Penal Code shall apply. Now, no person who has directed to pay compensation under this section shall be exempted from any civil or criminal liability in respect of the complaint made or information given by him. So, if a person is directed to pay a compensation under this section, still he will not be exempted from any civil or criminal liability that arised out of the complaint or information that was made by him or given by him. Now, provided that any amount that is paid to an accused person under this section shall be taken into account in awarding compensation to such person in any subsequent civil suit relating to the same matter. So, the civil court, if it is dealing with the same matter, then he will take into consideration any award of compensation that was passed by the magistrate under this section before passing an order by himself. Now, subsection 6 says that a complainant or informant who has been ordered under subsection 2 by a magistrate of the second class to pay compensation exceeding 100 rupees may appeal from the order as if such complainant or informant had been convicted on a trial held by such magistrate. An appeal may also lie from that order if such complainant or informant desires so. Subsection 7 says when an order for payment of compensation to an accused person is made in a case which is subject to appeal under subsection 6, then the compensation shall not be paid to him before the period allowed for the presentation of the appeal has elapsed. So, just like as we read in the previous chapter, in this chapter also this section has the same effect that we had read in the last section of the previous chapter. It says that such compensation shall not be paid by the person against whom it is allowed until the time period for preferring an appeal is passed, or if 1 month has not expired from the date of the order. So, the time limit or the limitation period is 1 month. You have to prefer an appeal within that period. So, that time will be excluded, and after that, if such appeal is not preferred, then after the expiry of 1 month, the compensation will have to be paid. Or if the appeal is preferred, then until the appeal is decided, the compensation will not be paid. Now, the provisions of this section apply to summons cases as well as to warrant cases. So, in both the summons and warrant cases, these provisions of this section apply. So, that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.